Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. My name is Shiva Kittusamy. I am an instructor here at UNR Extension's Small Business Education Program. Today we're going to be talking about building winning teams, management strategies for startups. Before we get started, I always like to give a little background if you're new and you haven't seen any of my videos. Again, my name is Shiva Kittusamy. I'm actually a recent graduate from the University of Nevada, Reno. My major was in finance with a minor in economics and entrepreneurship. At my time at the university, I did happen to create and run a startup with a team of 6, and the startup was able to actually go to market. So being able to manage that team and even just being able to go to market, a lot of the concepts we're going to be talking about today are very much tied to my experience, and I can definitely share some of those experiences with you in today's video. So, that being said, let's get started right into the class. So, today's agenda, we have on the plate leadership development, building strong company culture, team communication strategies, motivating teams, and managing startup growth challenges. And before I keep going, I know this is geared towards startups, but certain elements of this can actually be applied to small businesses as well. Just FYI. Cool. So, today's objective is to really equip all of y'all with actionable management strategies to scale their startups effectively. And I like to also invite anyone who's watching, if you guys have tips of your own from your experience with any of these topics we talk about today, feel free to put that in the comments. I love to have a collaborative effort with this video and really get community engagement as well. All right. So we're going to start with understanding startup leadership. Founders as leaders. It's really important that when you are a founder and you're leading a team, you're not just thinking about yourself and the company, you're thinking about everyone. It's a whole train. So shift from doing everything to leading. Make sure to delegate properly. This is something I struggle with a lot when I was running my company. I didn't really see that mindset until later on. And if you don't delegate, you'll actually get a lot of burnout from yourself. So shift from doing everything to actually leading, assigning certain items to individuals. I would highly recommend developing leadership skills early. Find a mentor, someone who's big, someone who has started a company, that has led people, and really latch on to some of their practices. Here are some key traits I want to highlight of an effective leader. Visionary thinking, adaptability, and decision-making under pressure. I'll also give a little glimpse of why these key traits make an effective leader, right? With visionary thinking, oftentimes people, come to me or ask me, like, how are you able to attract talent? Especially for you being a college student. Well, for one, my team was other college students, but they also had other things. I feel like when you're in college, there's other things you are very, very passionate about that are fun, like partying, clubs, sororities, etc., etc. So it's rather a little bit hard to get college students to get on board, especially good quality ones. So having the ability to see the vision and be able to communicate that vision will really, really not only hire great teammates, but also retain them. Adaptability is also another effective trait for effective leaders, because with startups, things are going to be pivoting. For example, my startup was a coffee tea delivery service, and it was intended for college campuses. But it originally started as food delivery. And doing that pivot from food delivery to coffee and tea, dramatic change. In terms of finances, it was great. In terms of everything else, a little bit hard. And also a little bit easier. So having the ability to be adaptable to whatever comes your way is going to be key. And then decision making under pressure, oh my God. This has happened countless times for myself. I would say getting used to making decisions really quickly is going to be so beneficial to you for the long run. So, question for you. What leadership challenges are you currently facing in your startup? I'd like for you to put your answer down below in the comments, all right? So, next up, cultivating a strong company culture. So, first up, what is company culture? Company culture is essentially shared values, behaviors, and beliefs that define your company. Now, why is it crucial for startups or small businesses too? Well, one of the best people when it comes to culture that was out there was Tony Hsieh, who was the CEO of Zappos, actually a company that was headquartered here in Vegas. Actually, it was the first tech company out here, or one of the first. I love his quote here. It says, "Our number one priority is company culture. Our whole belief is that if you get the culture right, most of the other stuff like delivering great customer service or building a long-term enduring brand will just happen naturally on its own." So if you have a great company culture, the product is going to follow. Everything after, even just the deliverability from your employees is just going to follow. So having a great company culture is really going to translate holistically throughout your whole business. All right. So some best practices: encourage open communication. I think one of the coolest headquarters in the world for tech is the Apple headquarters. And I say this because when Steve Jobs, it was his last creation, if you will, but he designed it in, people call it the UFO. It's a big circle with trees and whatnot in the middle. But the whole point of the circle was so that you can run into not only people you knew, but also new people. So it really opened up communication so that anyone could meet anyone from other departments. So really encourage open communication. Really encourage people to talk to other people. Don't limit people from communicating with each other, or telling them, "Hey, stop talking," or "Stop doing this." There's a time and place for that, but really encourage open communication. All right. Promote inclusivity and diversity. This is a very politically driven concept. But for me, how I see this is when you're hiring someone, don't just look at how they look or how they dress or whatnot. Really just look at if they bring a really good perspective to your company. It shouldn't matter about their race or religion or whatnot. You should really look at what they bring to the company in terms of their ideas, their passions, etc., etc. That's what inclusivity and diversity is, because if you can mesh those new concepts with some of the current concepts, you can make something really cool. Foster a sense of belonging as well. People want to come to work. You want people to come to the office, and I think that's why a lot of companies struggle with people staying remote, because company culture is not fun anymore in person. So you have to make company culture fun so that people have a sense of belonging. People want to stay. People want to come to the office. And most importantly, hiring for culture, fit, and skill. This is probably one of the most important concepts you're going to want to follow. All right? Now, next up, I have a little video. As you probably know me. I love peppering videos into these classes. So this one is actually from Tony Shea. And he's going to be talking about culture and how it was priority one for Zappos, okay? Hopefully this plays for you guys, but we're going to watch it. It's a 5-minute video talking Stanford.
Our number one priority is company culture. And our whole belief is that if you get the culture right, most of the other stuff like delivering great customer service or building a long-term enduring brand will just happen naturally on its own. And our belief is that a company's culture and a company's brand are really just two sides of the same coin. The brand is just a lagging indicator of the culture. And if you think of, ask random people about what they think of the airline industry as a whole, and usually you'll get back responses about bad customer service or apathetic employees and so on. And like it or not, that is the brand of the industry, even though no airline set out for that to be their brand. So we really focus on getting the culture right. So what are some of the things that we do to really help build our culture? Well, it starts with the hiring process. Everyone that's hired in our headquarters in Las Vegas, doesn't matter what position, you need accountant, lawyer, software developer, you go through the exact same training as our call center reps. One of the weeks is actually later on when we send you to Kentucky and you do all the different warehouse functions, picking, packing, shipping, receiving, and so on. But the first 4 weeks, before you start your actual job, we do call center training, and we go over company history, the importance of company culture, our philosophy about customer service, and then you're actually on the phone for 2 weeks taking calls from customers. And the reason why we have everyone do that is because if we're serious about building our brand to be about the very best customer service and customer experience, then customer service shouldn't just be a department, it should be the entire company. And the other great thing about that is during our busy Q4 holiday season, which is now coming up, people from all different departments can and do help out, and they hop on the phones and help answer the phone calls. So that means we don't need to hire temps that may be bad for our culture. We don't need to hire temps that may not deliver the same level of customer service that we're looking for. The other thing that we do is at the end of the training, we actually make an offer to the entire class. And the offer is this. We will pay you, actually, it starts at the beginning of the end of the first week of training. They've been there for a week, and the offer is, we will pay you for that week you've spent training, plus a bonus of $2,000 to quit and leave the company right now. And that's a standing offer until the end of the training, and then we raise it to $3,000 and extend it a couple months beyond that as well. And the reason we initially did this was because we didn't want employees that were there just for a paycheck. And starting pay in Las Vegas is $11 an hour. There's plenty of other call centers there. And so it's a pretty significant amount of money. And on average, we found out actually about 2 or 3% of people end up taking the offer. The offer started several years ago at $100, and we actually keep upping the offer because we feel like not enough people are taking the offer. But what surprised us and what we didn't realize was that actually the biggest benefit came from the people who didn't take the offer, because they still had to go home, talk to their friends and family, and ask themselves, is this a company that I really believe in? Is this a company that I want to be a part of and whose culture I want to contribute to? And when they decide to turn down the easy money, what we found is that when they're back in the office on Monday, they're that much more passionate and engaged, and really that by far that's been the biggest benefit for us that we didn't even expect in doing that. But before someone gets started at Zappos, before they go through the training, we actually interview everyone in 2 sets of separate interviews. The first set of interviews for someone is kind of the standard stuff. The hiring manager and his or her team will interview for fit within the team, relevant experience, technical ability, and so on. But the second set of interviews is done by our HR department, looking purely for culture fit. And they have to pass both in order to be hired. So we've passed on a lot of really smart, talented people that we know can make an immediate impact on our top or bottom line. But if they're not good for our culture, we won't hire them. And the reverse is true, too. We'll fire someone if they're bad for our culture, even if they're doing their specific job function perfectly fine, even if they're a superstar in their job function. If they're bad for the culture, we'll fire them just for that reason. And our performance reviews are 50% based on whether you're living and inspiring the Zappos culture and others. The other thing we have is something called a culture book. And I'll make that freely available, give you information later on about that. But it's something we put out once a year, and we ask all of our employees to write a few paragraphs about what the Zappos culture means to them. And except for typos, it's unedited. So it includes the good and the bad, and it's organized by department, so you can kind of see how the accounting culture might be slightly different from the warehouse culture. So kind of like when you go to Amazon and you read customer reviews of products, these are essentially employee reviews of the company. We're also very active on Twitter. If you go to twitter.zappos.com, you can see there's a page there. We have about 500 employees that are active on Twitter. We introduce every employee to Twitter during the training, and then it's up to them whether they want to continue using it. But then we have a page that aggregates all of the employee tweets together. And so the way that's helped our culture is you may not talk to that person that's 3 aisles down from you except for saying hi in the hallway, but through Twitter you might find out that he went hiking over the weekend, and if you're also an avid hiker, now you have something to talk about, and you might go hiking together.
Cool. I absolutely love that video because, again, going back to that point is with culture, if you can represent it holistically, that behavior or that impact can really, really result everything in the company. I really love what Zappos did with not just Zappos, but or Tony Hsieh himself. When he does, when it is the holiday season, he actually gets on the phones himself and does sales calls with the sales team. I know DoorDash does something similar where they actually have every single corporate employee actually be a DoorDasher to kind of see what the experience is like. And from doing that and being very integrated into the company, you're able to determine different things that are going wrong, different pieces of improvements, etc. But again, he really, really stressed that if you, even though you might be the smartest person, you might be the best fit person, but if you're not a culture fit, they're not going to hire you. So, really great video. I always love playing it for this class. So, next up is fostering clear and impactful team communications. So, what's the importance of communication startups? It's so trivial with communication, but it's so important. And a lot of people miss out on this. Make sure when you are communicating your startup, streamline the communication as your team grows. This is going to prevent miscommunication. And the more you grow and the bigger the team gets, the more lost in the weeds it can become. All right? And that goes back to that. As a leader, communication is going to be key at making you a true leader, not just a founder. All right? Because you're going to want to know not only delegating the tasks to certain individuals, but also having them report to you on what they did, what they didn't, what things we need to work on as a company, etc., etc. All right? So there are some tools available for communication. These are some things that I have used. Slack is a great platform to use just for different departments to communicate with each other, or even just the whole startup or business to communicate all together. Asana, Trello, ClickUp are great project management tools. So oftentimes when you're doing a startup, you have projects, you have goals, you have milestones, and as a leader, you have to set strict deadlines for stuff. And these project management software platforms can make sure you obtain those goals, all right, or those deadlines. And then finally, Teams. Teams is great for, it's the same thing as Slack, but it's with Microsoft. So if you're using Microsoft products, great platform. Next is feedback loops. I would highly encourage feedback everywhere. And make sure there's an open door policy for transparency. Personally, one of my experiences in my career was working at Apple. One of the best companies to work for. If you can work for them, it's amazing. I actually worked at the Apple store in Reno, but they really prided themselves on feedback, and that was the culture. And with doing so, I learned how to give effective feedback to individuals. And certain individuals I gave feedback were higher up in the food chain. And it can be scary if you've never done it before. But once I was able to do it, I felt more integrated with the team. That I was, one, able to give effective feedback. Two, the other person was able to receive that feedback and consider it and hopefully take it in a good manner. So with feedback, it's all in all going to be a great tool to make sure your business succeeds. All right. So next is motivating and retaining top talent. Here are some key drivers of employee motivation. Recognize and reward contributions. I don't know how many times that I have felt like I was not rewarded and I was doing insane work. I would say try to recognize as much as you can, and this could be fit into the culture as well, where maybe each morning you highlight an employee from the previous day for a specific thing, or maybe you have the team highlight or vote or even put in some of their things that they've seen from other employees, and maybe the most impactful one gets mentioned out in the beginning of the day. So recognize and reward contributions. Also provide opportunities for growth and development. If you're ultimately a company that is, not really trying to grow, and you're not giving that growth and development for that individual, there's no need for them to stay at the company. They're going to go somewhere else that they can get better growth and development opportunities. All right. Here are some non-monetary incentives. Flexibility and work-life balance. Oftentimes with startups, there isn't a work-life balance, but have some flexibility, if they have a family, be respectful of their time, but also reiterate, hey, make sure you get everything done, and maybe you take a 4-day, maybe it's a 4-day work week where Monday, Saturday, Sunday are off, so have some flexibility and work-life balance. Also build a sense of purpose on the team. Again, it goes back to that mission, the culture, that all ties into these non-monetary incentives. Employee retention. This is actually a really cool statistic. According to the Small Business Administration, hiring a new employee can cost 1.2 to 1.4 times their salary. I really included the statistic because I wanted to show how stupid it is to not make that your number one priority as a manager, to really retain employees, not just any employee, but also top talent. Rather, all your employees should be top talents, as well as cultural fits, but really making sure you retain, and it's really hard to leave, that's really going to be impactful for your future as a business. And you got to do whatever it takes to be able to do that sometimes. All right? All right. Managing challenges during growth. Scaling pains. Oftentimes, you're going to identify common challenges when growing teams. You're going to want to make sure also to maintain startup agility during growth. When you are scaling, it's going to be really hard to have some of those key points I talked about earlier in these slides, keeping that all together when it comes to getting bigger, because oftentimes it might get harder for you as the top leader to not feel in touch with some of your employees. Okay, so identifying common challenges when growing teams and maintaining startup agility during growth is going to be important. Again, delegation and trust. Trust your employees to do the work that you hire them to do. I don't know how many times where, as a founder, when I was running my company, I was so worried to take vacation off. And I was like, oh my God, I can't take off. The business is not going to run. This is not. And then I had to sit back and remember, hey, I have faith in these individuals I hired, and put on this team, I feel like they can do the work. With the work I delegated, I feel like they can complete those tasks. So really trust your employees to do the work that you hire them to do. If you can't do this, this is also going to lead to burnout and even your startup probably failing. Team dynamics. What do you do when conflict breaks out? Great question. I'll give a little story from myself and my experience with my startup. I'm not going to name names, but I will mention that I had a CMO, a chief marketing officer, on my team, and she was obviously in charge of the whole marketing department. And she had an interesting idea. For me, it was all about branding for the company. So I tasked her with how can we need to be able to name our deliverers that are delivering our products because we were a coffee tea delivery service. So I tasked her with branding or naming what these deliverers are going to be named. And she had a great idea to do a raffle and blah, 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 blah. And I said, great, let's do it. And, I gave her a chance. I said, you know what? I'm not going to turn down an idea. I had skepticism. However, I was like, you know what? Let's try as much as we can. Who cares? We're just a startup. We have to try things. So I said, go for it. Do it. And ultimately, I gave her, I think, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe even a month to do this. And just from what her team reported and ultimately seeing what was the result of that time given to focus on this task, nothing was completed. Nothing was done. Nothing was executed. It was just an idea. And I had a problem with that. And, I respectfully said that, hey, we are not doing this anymore. This idea. We have to think of something else that we want to do. I gave you time. I needed you to execute on this. And I gave you the opportunity to execute on this, and you didn't. And this individual actually came back. And keep in mind, this was a group meeting. This is a whole company meeting. She came back, and she started cussing at me and getting super pissed off and really angry. And the number one mistake that most startup founders might do, or leaders, or CEOs, or whatnot, they're going to become really, really defensive and really on the offense. They're cursing at me. I'm going to curse back at them. But for me, I really kept my composure. And that is really important when you're leading a team. One, it shows great deal of respect for other teammates. And it shows that you actually listen. And that's what I did. I listened, even though it was very vulgar, very disrespectful, especially since I was higher up in the hierarchy, quote unquote. I didn't see it as that, but just, in traditional business terms, management terms, I was higher up in the hierarchy, but, she was blatantly cussing at me, and everyone just felt weird about it. But for me, I listened to it, and I basically said, hey, let's take this offline. I heard what you had to say, and I approached her offline and found out that there were some other things going on in the background, hence her stress. Then I made sure, hey, let's work through this together. I want to make sure you're accountable for the ideas you have and the responsibilities you have to do. And, we talked about solutions. But again, this is what happens. This is what you should do when conflict breaks out. Stay calm, stay relaxed, and just listen. And this applies not just in business, but to anyone, anything out there. If someone's yelling at you or frustrated or cussing you out, just listen. Don't talk. Don't be aggressive. Just listen. Absorb what they're saying, and there might be some truth in there. You might have been in the wrong. You have to own up to that, and that's what makes a leader, is owning up to your own failures and being able to pivot and attack on those new ideas or those weaknesses you have. Okay? So some key takeaways. Leadership development. So having those strong leadership skills and traits, right? Culture is everything, period. Communication is key. Motivating your team is also an important thing to make sure you retain top talent or just talent in general. And preparing for growth. These are the key takeaways it's going to take for you to manage a successful team for your startup or small business. With that being said, if you have any questions, I'd love for you to put it down below. Again, this is, we have a whole library of classes available to you absolutely for free here on YouTube. I highly recommend coming physically, if you are in Vegas, physically coming into our classes as we do teach this material. It's a little bit more in depth because we are having class participation and we're able to go more in depth stories, whatnot. Really just get that personal touch on teaching to the class. But if you have any questions, feel free to comment that down below. And we'll make sure our team gets back to you with an answer, or even myself. With that being said, thank you so much for watching this. I highly recommend watching our other videos on this before. That's it. So I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.